Somewhere in Texas, a locomotive engineer named Mike Elliott is sitting in his car after a long shift, trying to leave the parking lot, and his own manager is jumping onto the hood of his vehicle while accusing him of assault. And the whole thing started because Elliott had done something that should have been routine, which was reporting safety problems to the federal government, and the inspection that followed found 357 defects on the property. And now, his career is about to be destroyed over a confrontation he did not start. That is the American Freight Railroad in 2026, and if you think the cameras and the GPS and the tracking systems are there to make things safer, you might want to sit down for what comes next. The railroads will tell you that the surveillance is about preventing accidents, and they will point to the Chatsworth collision back in 2008, where an engineer was texting instead of watching the signals, and they will say that inward-facing cameras would have caught that behavior before it was too late, and everything they say will sound perfectly reasonable until you understand how this technology actually gets used, which is that the cameras and the data recorders and the GPS systems have become weapons in a war against the very workers who are supposed to benefit from them. When the National Transportation Safety Board recommended inward-facing cameras after Chatsworth, the unions came out against it immediately, and the president of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, a man named Dennis Pierce, called the idea of constant surveillance in the locomotive cab oppressive and un-American, and he said his primary concern was that the railroads would use camera footage punitively against employees, and everyone in the industry understood exactly what he meant, because they had been watching it happen for years. The Federal Railroad Administration itself expressed concern that these recording devices could, and I am quoting their own words here, erode morale and offer manifold opportunities for selective enforcement and possible retaliation against employees for reasons having nothing to do with safety. That is not some union firebrand talking. That is the federal agency responsible for railroad safety acknowledging in writing that surveillance technology in the hands of the railroads becomes a tool for intimidation rather than accident prevention. A group called Railroad Workers United put it about as clearly as anyone could when they explained why every railroader should oppose the cameras. And what they said was this: if we are not free to be ourselves, to express ourselves, to discuss matters of importance to us, if we feel that the boss is always present looking over our shoulder, we will not make very good union men and women. A worker who is afraid and paranoid is a worker who is constantly worried about protecting their own rear end, not a worker who finds solidarity to come naturally. And that is precisely what the railroads have created across this industry. A workforce so terrified of surveillance that they have stopped reporting the very hazards that cause derailments and injuries and disasters. ProPublica spent over a year examining this problem, and what they found was staggering. They identified 111 federal court cases where workers alleged they had been disciplined or fired after reporting safety concerns, and nearly 60% of those cases ended with the railroads paying settlements to make them go away. And 3 cases in recent years resulted in jury verdicts of over $1 million for workers who were wrongfully terminated. The Department of Labor found that railroad companies violated whistleblower protection laws in 13 separate cases just since 2018, and these were not marginal situations, but clear-cut examples of workers being punished for doing exactly what federal law says they should do. One worker at BNSF tried to alert headquarters about broken wheels that could have derailed trains. Another pair of workers at CSX slowed their train to comply with a federal safety mandate and got pulled from their jobs for it. A CSX engineer refused to work a 12-hour shift just hours after his previous shift ended because federal law requires a rest period, and the company came after him anyway. The Mike Elliott case became a symbol of everything wrong with this system because it showed how far the railroads will go to destroy someone who speaks up. Elliott was Washington State's top safety official with the Locomotive Engineers Union, and workers were bringing him their concerns, and he took those concerns to the Federal Railroad Administration. And the FRA responded with an inspection that found hundreds of defects, and his managers at BNSF were furious. What happened in that parking lot led to criminal charges that he was eventually acquitted of, but BNSF fired him anyway, and he spent years fighting through the courts until a jury awarded him $1.25 million, and the company appealed, and he did not get paid until 2018, which was 7 years after he was terminated. There is a man named Mike Radigan who worked for CSX before he was fired, and he explained how the disciplinary cases become what he called a deer head for managers, meaning a trophy hung on the wall to send a message, and the message is simple. If we can do it to him, we can do it to you. That understanding spreads through the workforce until nobody wants to be the next example, and so the hazards go unreported, and the defects get passed down the line, and the trains keep rolling until something gives. The surveillance is not limited to cameras. Positive train control, which was mandated after Chatsworth to prevent collisions, uses GPS technology to track every locomotive in real time. And while that technology genuinely does improve safety by preventing trains from running red signals, it also means the railroad knows exactly where every crew is located at every moment. One worker who was tracked via a GPS app on her company phone compared the experience to wearing an ankle bracelet like someone under house arrest, and when she uninstalled the app because it was monitoring her even when she was off the clock, she was fired. And she sued for over $500,000. What makes all of this worse is that the managers conducting the surveillance are themselves operating under a system that rewards them for suppressing safety reports. ProPublica found that railroad supervisors receive year-end bonuses tied to performance metrics, and on a base salary of $100,000, someone with a good evaluation can earn $20,000 to $25,000 in cash bonuses, and those bonuses drop dramatically if managers fail to meet efficiency targets. And guess what hurts their efficiency scores? Safety reports that require investigation and repair. A BNSF track inspector named Don Sanders actually recorded his manager berating him for writing up defects, and on that recording, you can hear the manager, a division engineer named Keith Jones, saying that he is about to lose his job and his family's welfare because of what Sanders is flagging. After Sanders was fired and after BNSF claimed it was for time theft and not retaliation, Jones received a glowing performance review that literally said, "Your team is injury-free, slow orders are at an all-time low, relationships are good." Don Sanders is no longer working for BNSF. The Federal Aviation Administration figured out decades ago that you cannot have a safe transportation system if workers are afraid to report problems, and they built something called the Aviation Safety Reporting System that offers immunity from discipline for voluntary safety reports. And the result is that commercial aviation has become the safest mode of transportation in human history. The railroad industry looked at that model and decided that the ability to punish workers was more important than the ability to learn from near misses, and so they rejected confidential reporting, and they kept the surveillance, and they kept the retaliation, and East Palestine happened anyway. That is where we are in 2026, watching every move these workers make while punishing them for telling us what they see.